You're listening to WeDeepen Media.
Politics. Does the topic trigger you in any way? I used to avoid it for fear that I wasn't smart enough to discuss it. Well, that all ends with today's episode and with the upcoming Independent National Convention, where WeDeepen will be presenting a panel on love and politics, featuring me, Bigtree, Charles Eisenstein, Dr. Avrum Weiss, and Stefanos Sifandos. The Independent National Convention is happening April 3rd through 5th of 2023 in Austin, Texas. You can get tickets and see further details at WeDeepen.com. What I'm most excited about right now is elevating political hope. Because listen, if anyone can be a shaman to political enlightenment and wise democracy, it's Indy Rishi. He's inspired me to speak up, and his show, Political Hope, on the WeDeepen Podcast Network has over 70 podcast interviews to listen to and further understand how politics are evolving by way of people like Indy and his guests and the ones on the ground leading the way. Find Political Hope at WeDeepen.com or search for it now in your podcast app. Hit the subscribe or follow button and check it out after you listen to this episode of Deepen with Christina. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Deepen with Christina. I'm your host, Christina Weber, founder and CEO of WeDeepen, Feminine Weapon, and also a certified professional love coach and matchmaker. If you haven't lately, definitely go to WeDeepen.com. Check out all of the upcoming social and transformational experiences. Los Angeles is popping recently. Last night we hosted the Dating Dojo with Yosef there at a beautiful, whimsical loft apartment in downtown Los Angeles at an Ocarina Maker's house. Such positive feedback has come back from that event of people feeling though it's life-changing. One of the reviews actually said that he felt as though he got from that event something that was missing the entire time in his dating journey. And he said it's going to take a long time as he compresses that information and utilizes that as he heads back out into the dating world and making all of his dreams come true relationally. If you do enjoy this podcast, please do like, subscribe, follow, rate it. It helps more people find it, helps me continue to do it. At WeDeepen, you'll also see that we have a new relationship course. Relationship Renegades has developed a higher love certification. The Relationship Renegades, Emilio and Rachel Brooks-Smith, they are these shining lights that have distilled the wisdom that they have gained not only before they met each other, but in relationship with each other. And they teach this course together. Highly recommend it, especially when it comes to the idea of studying love. Like a lot of times people think that love is innate. And I do. Yeah, we're born through love. You hope that we're born through love. And then, we, come into this existence, but then we're just conditioned with a bunch of bullshit. And it's not necessarily a practice that is given to us in our educational curriculum. And, anger is really easy, but love is actually the miracle. So finding spaces that you can study love, be in love, practice love. This is what my journey is all about, and this podcast and everyone you meet through it. It's really interesting today because we're going to talk politics. And I'm going to confess, I've never voted. You might have heard me say that before in the past, but I've never voted. And here I am now. It is a few weeks before the Independent National Convention happening in Austin, Texas, April 3rd through the 5th. And I am facilitating the Love and Politics panel on the main stage Tuesday, 2 p.m. I'm sitting here with the founder of the Independent National Union, who is also the producer of the Independent National Convention, Christopher Life. And I have to giggle a little bit because who would have thought that I would be in politics, considering that I'm a human being who has never voted before. And the reason I haven't voted is I had to distill this. It's interesting. I talk a lot about dating. There was probably 3 or 4 years ago, I was out on a date with it's funny. I'm just going to say his name here because I just texted him recently. Nick Spano and I are out on a date, and I shared that I had never voted, and I felt shamed by him. This was around like 2017, 2018. And I remember though, he was kind of, and that's the thing, was shamed. I interpreted it as shame because only the ego can feel shame. And but I didn't know how to answer the question of why I didn't vote. I didn't really know how to defend myself because he was taking a position creates opposition. He was taking a position that's a civic duty, is to vote. And I didn't have the words to really share why I had never done it before. So I went home. It was around Christmas time. I went home with my family and I journaled and I researched, I Googled, I tried to find, there has to be somebody else in the world that didn't vote because it was my little secret. I never told anybody that I didn't vote. So I didn't know anybody else who didn't vote either. And so I went on the internet to try to find who's like me and why do they not vote? And I journaled about it. And really what kind of came true to me underneath of all that, number one, is my work is in bringing people together and creating human connection. And politics to me always felt like this divisive, like it was dividing people. And I wanted spaces where everybody can come together. Like whether you're a Trump supporter or a Trump hater, come into the same space. Like whether, that's what I want. I want the rich, juicy conversations and thoughtful discourse is fine by me. Like, let's be in a space so we can move through the conflict. So I realized if I took a position and I wanted you to vote for one party, whether it's red or blue or Democrat or Republican, I would be taking a position and then I would be biased in my spaces. So didn't want that. Number two, I've never felt that politics had, like, no politician I felt like had ever spoke about love. It was missing underneath of it all. Like there was a lot of anger and hostility, but there was never really of a care. Even throughout the COVID experience, I was just craving for some leader to speak up about, hey, we love you all. We know this is really hard for you. But that just never happened. So now taking all the relationship psychology and having this opportunity to inject that into politics is really exciting me. And I'm not convinced. I'm not telling you that I'm going to vote, but maybe I will vote. It's if I do, it will most likely probably be out of the two-party system because I'd love to see something completely recreated. And so this idea of being independent, although I do believe humans' greatest achievement is interdependence, not independence. Anyway, I'm rambling. I'm going to bring in my guest, Christopher Life. Thank you for joining me, despite I know your busy schedule and 3 weeks out to the Independent National Convention.
I'm really happy to be here with you. Excuse me. Thanks for sharing your story. I'll tell you a personal story that kind of ties into your story. I was in the voting booth, I don't know, like 6 or 8 years ago. And I just started getting the heebie-jeebies. Like I was just so uncomfortable and I started shaking. And ultimately I had to give my ballot back to the person working at the poll station. And I had to run across the street from the library that I was in into the park and lay down on the ground and just ground and reset. What just happened? Why did I get so profoundly uncomfortable and why did I have to leave? And what I kind of got in that moment, which was part of what shaped the trajectory of my life since then, was that the entire system that I was participating in that voting system, was a system that I wasn't aligned with. That the primary focus on the two-party system, the way that it's so easy to not have the personal education of what all these names are, who all these people are, what they stand for, trying to reduce my civic engagement to a ballot tick on a ballot. And so that was part of my journey of realizing that it wasn't a civic duty of mine to participate in the system that I was presented. It was a civic duty of mine to create a system that I'm aligned with and then to participate in that. And ever since then, I've been on a journey of really trying to understand what deep systemic transformation our country could really look like, what that would entail, how to go about doing that. And I identify as something like a revolutionary. And I don't say that as like a buzzword, but I say that as a technical term. And a national revolution is a full change of power from the folks and the organizations and the groups and the families and the networks that hold power. And a revolution is that not incrementally shifting or modifying or reforming, but actually a fundamental new set of stakeholders actually holding power. And when I look at our country and I see the two-party system and I see the kind of corporatocracy that funds that system, that makes our government primarily a mechanism to support corporate interests, then a full revolution in our country doesn't mean that there's some dictator that gets, thrown out, or that we need to put like 1 million people in the street in front of the White House. That's not like a thing in our country that's relevant. A revolution in our country would mean that something other than the two-party system is what holds power in this country. And I say the two-party system and not one of the parties because I perceive that as an integrated system that, like a duopoly economically, it's not that one is better than the other. It's that the relationship between those two things boxes out the other competition and maintains their entrenchment of power as one integrated system of political control in this country. So for something other than the Republican and Democrat duopoly system to hold control in this country is what's fascinated me and has driven me for the last 6-8 years. And my first step towards that was, if we just create a better party that is more connected to love and holism and common sense and solution oriented and understands the systemic nature of our problems and the systemic solutions that we need to be able to drive in all sectors. And we got people elected into office that understood all of that, then maybe that would solve the problem. And so I found a party called One Nation because it was the exact cure to the two-party system was a party that was about the unification of the country. And so I named the party One Nation. And I did that for a couple of years, and I grew that small political party. Within a couple of years, I realized that the whole country was full of small political parties that were young and emerging that created because they wanted to create a solution to the two-party system. And they were in competition with each other. And so now you've got, 100 small parties in this country, most of which most people have never heard of before, that are all trying to more or less with their own aesthetic solve the problem of creating something new that people can join that will create a new solution or a new alternative in the two-party system. The emergence of Forward as a party that a lot of people have heard about is the biggest example of a new political party emerging in the last couple of years. And they've done a bigger job of presenting themselves on a national stage than any other party. And that's founded by Andrew Yang, who was a presidential candidate in 2020 election cycle and kind of used that presidential campaign to kind of launch his political career and start Forward and build a lot of national attention around it. And they've done good work. But the punchline of what I'm trying to get to is what I realized is that a new political party in and of itself wasn't going to solve the problem. And what we would actually need is a coordination system for all of these 100 different political parties to be able to act together and flex a political muscle together and coordinate in the election activities and coordinate in the democracy reform activities and coordinate in the media narrative activities and coordinate in the local organizing activities. Because all of those parties and all those independent groups in silo working against each other basically pits those independent resources against each other and guarantees that a Republican or Democrat's going to win every election. But if you put all those parties into a coordinated system, then with just a little bit of coordination, you can turn, all these parties working against each other into all these parties working for each other and create a fundamentally new center of gravity for American politics. And so it was from that set of insights that the Independent National Union as an organization was born, to be able to create a backbone support system, kind of like a board of tourism that, supports a whole bunch of restaurants and then puts a billboard up and says, hey, come to our town. And all the little restaurants chip in a little bit to that because everybody benefits if more people come to the town. So we need something like a board of tourism for the entire independent industry, independent sector. And so that's when the Independent National Union was born. And the Independent National Convention is a national event platform to achieve those objectives. And so what we're doing with the upcoming Independent National Convention is we're bringing together not only the independent parties, but we're bringing together dozens of organizations that are working at a national scale in democracy reform. That are like an independent party is trying to change who gets elected, and a reform organization is trying to change how our political process works. So you've got dozens of independent parties and dozens of reform organizations, many of which are completely siloed and not coordinating. And then you have all these emerging technologies, and then you have these tangential social movements, and you have these independent media platforms, and you have all of this stuff. And you realize that there's a bigger movement at play, which is millions and millions of people and thousands of organizations that are declaring independence from what? From the status quo, declaring independence from how the world has been, and preparing to determine where we go from here in all different sectors, from independent space companies who are saying the government doesn't need to control space anymore, like we can do that independently, to blockchain platforms saying governments don't need to control currency, like we can do that independently. So if you look underneath all these different systemic solutions, you see this like underlying ethos of independence. And again, like we can talk about interdependence in a second, but the profound piece is that it's declaring independence from how the world has been, while also simultaneously declaring independence from the actual political structure that's controlling the government. So it's all this full stack of what it means to be declaring independence right now. And we're at a point in our national cycle that I think correlates to where we were at 250 years ago, where the colonies came together, and through collective action and coordination, which they hadn't done previously, were able to declare independence from King George III in England and run together a revolutionary war that enabled them to determine their own future and create and institute their own forms of government. So right now, fast forward 250 years ago, forward, and here we are. But it's not the colonies that need to come together. It's all these different organizations and factions amongst the existing independent sector, which are today the metaphorically like similar to those colonies, that are coming together. And what we're doing is we're simultaneously declaring independence from the existing dominant power structure, which isn't King George, but today it's the two-party system. And through the severance of the obedience to the system as it has been, we are now, through our own inspiration and creativity, inventing and creating the world that we want. And so that's like that's the profundity of what I see as happening. And so the upcoming convention is hosting 45 different panel conversations on everything from democracy reform to parties working together to movement coordination to blockchain to AI to space technology, you name it. And in one building, we're bringing together hundreds of leaders that have never been in the same space before and helping them to be able to see that they're all a part of something larger than they might have ever even realized they were explicitly a part of. And I call that the United Independent Movement. And so the purpose and function of the Independent National Convention is to help to activate this United Independent Movement that can allow all these different organizations, from the political space to the technology space to the corporate space to the finance space to the cultural space to the relationship side of things, to realize, holy smokes, we're a part of a major movement. And we can achieve profound outcomes for rebirthing our political system and rebirthing our nation and rebirthing our world as we know it, by creating shared vision, by developing coordination systems, and by committing to the joint action that's required in the space between organizations to achieve together what they couldn't achieve on their own.
Wow. I am so grateful to have just caught that more deeper understanding of what's happening. I imagine I talk a little bit about a new company called Aboutly, which has developed the ability to assess brains in 20 different nodes. And I can see in how you've just broken that down that your brain must be structure first, which is, and my brain is structure first. It's like building the container. It's like, I hear you saying, we don't have it all figured out in the moment, but the pathway to get there is first by creating the platform for discovery of new ways of doing things and a way of working together. So for, a listener out there, if you want to make a difference, it's like, you don't know where to begin. Well, it's like, come to the mall of all of the alternatives that you've been told it's only this way or that way. And actually, no, there's many places that you can, buy the shirt, travel to, do the things. And in this, it's like you get to discover what actually you resonate with, and we can work together as a collective, because if it's fragmented, and there's no one central location. So this is essentially the central location to everybody gather who's feels as though something's not working. Something's not working in the leadership of the country. It's not as conscious as it could be. And also, our generation, Christopher, I'm in my early 40s. You're probably in your late 30s. And it's our time. It's essentially, we're the product of a generation that was, got access to the internet, which showed us that there was another way of doing things. We saw kind of our from a relationship standpoint, I saw breakdowns in the home because they weren't given relationship education. And then we got rise to this, and also the breakdown of the church. I think there's something that's at the convention that's around religion. So breakdown of the church. And so there's a lack of places for people to gather, and there's a spiritual malnutrition across the board. So this is, as the seekers, I'll say the seekers are generally the ones running to Burning Man and going to the festivals and taking the Tantra workshops and enrolling in, Joe Dispenza and watching Gaia and Tony Robbins and MITT and Landmark. And we have been groomed for a new way of leadership, and now inviting everyone, not saying, hey, I figured it all out and this is how it's going to work. Instead, it's building the container to invite people into the container and say, hey, let's do this together and let's reframe something. So I really appreciate and can see more deeply. And I pride myself on being a salesperson. I love, I sold pharmaceuticals at one point, and the first decade of my career was always in sales, marketing, business development. And I remember going into these corporations and jobs and being like, wait, what are we doing? Like, this was great training. Thanks for this training in my life. But like, seems fucked up here. Like, what's really happening? You want me to sell Ambien, and Ambien CR, and my biggest competitor is Ambien, produced by the same company. And then I started to work with a lot of the nonprofits, like the American Diabetes Association, the American Cancer Society. And then I was a volunteer for them, raising lots of funding. And then I was like, wait, why am I doing this? This CEO of this company makes like $3 million something, and I'm volunteering my time as they're in this cushy office. Like, what is happening? And then they're funded by the pharmaceutical companies. This all seems out of whack. So now of being like, this is our time to shine. We've done all the work, attended all the programs, and creating that space to bring the leaders and people together to have these deeper, heartfelt conversations and to connect and to create interdependence, which is something that you said, I'm going to build on that of interdependence. So because one thing when we gathered together, by the way, I did see when you did the one, I noticed when you did the one party, One Nation, it was around the time, I think 2018 was the first time I went to Burning Man. And I think I heard something and I was like, oh, that looks interesting. And then I saw the unfoldment in 2020. There was an independent national convention in Wyoming. I saw it on Facebook after it had happened. And I was like, what was that? I wanted to be there. And then around that time, or shortly after that, in December of 2020, a group of 20 people gathered in Washington, D.C. at Brock Pierce's place, and we started to organize, and I really appreciate it. But I remember saying to you at that point is like, Christopher, this is great, the Independent National Convention, but humans' greatest achievement is interdependence.
Let's jump into that. So I don't know what your definition of interdependence is, and everyone might have their own definition or meaning around it. For me, interdependence isn't something that we're aspiring towards. It's just the so-ness of how we are. Like, we're already interdependent. We have interdependencies with the people around us. We have interdependencies with nature. So to me, interdependence is the foundational quality of our experience and relationship with reality. When you take independence and you take unity, then you kind of create a certain type of potency around what it means to be independent, and from that space of independence to consciously come into coordination or unification or togetherness with other people who are also independent. So to me, the concept of united independence is a more powerful map, because in that map, I know that my personal development trajectory is to first and foremost think, speak, and act for myself. I have to know myself, right? Know thyself is like the beginning of any spiritual journey. So I have to learn how to become resilient against manipulation and control, driven by my own fear, the fear of other people projected onto me, so that I can actually come into relationship with myself, so that I can know my own sovereign orientation, so I can think for myself. Once I can think for myself, then I can speak for myself. I can actually open up my throat, and I can know that I'm speaking my own truth. From that place, I can now act for myself, because speech is the thing that kind of, precipitates and enables a context for action to occur, because we use our language and we act. So now I can think, speak, and take action in the world that's not driven by other people trying to control me, but it's coming from my own core. So that's where all of my power is, right? So now I'm stacking up all my energy centers because I am in action with and from and through my center. Now, from that place, and actually only from that place, can I now come into a quality of harmonic relationship with other people that are also committed to that same level of independence, that same level of sovereignty. And now we have the context to be in a relational context where we are both independent and united simultaneously, which allows us to be a part of the benefit of collective action, whether it's the collective action of two people having a good time themselves, or the collective action of 1 million people organizing to build a road or a school system or a power station or whatever. And so the ultimate aspiration for humanity that I hold is that we have the ability to be completely independent as individuals and be completely unified collectively, and that our participation in the collective doesn't undermine our own agency, and that our commitment to our own agency doesn't undermine our ability to participate with the collective. And so that's what this notion of united independence means to me. Or I also use a philosophical concept called sovereign unity. United independence is a little more of a 3D kind of way of articulating that. So that's the framework at like a cultural level or an internal operating system level that I think is really what we need to go towards. And so one way of kind of reducing everything that I'm working on politically is developing the distributed cultural capacity. And all that culture is a distributed set of behaviors that enable some particular capacity. The cultural capacity for millions of people across this country, that's the influence that we can have at this moment in time, but certainly in aspirations towards globally, to be able to speak, think, and act for themselves, and to do so in careful consideration and in the best interest of all they share their community with, whether that's the community at the scale of a household, at the scale of a city, or at the scale of a national community. And if we can really develop the individual and the cultural capacity through practice and through personal transformation, overcoming the parts of ourselves that would, prevent us from doing that effectively, which involves meeting our own traumas and healing our own traumas within ourselves so that we don't have unconscious patterns of fear that we're muddling up the gears of attempting to do this well, then we can have a political system that is a reflection of that internal cultural system. And now if we have cities and states and national structures that are designed to support people in A, being themselves well, and B, working together to be able to create and install the solutions into society that they're most inspired to, that are designed to improve the quality of life for all, then now all of a sudden government goes from being this like bad word thing that's just full of corruption and war and conspiracy and all of that to an institution of human organizing that's fundamentally generative at all scales. So the vision that I hold for humanity and government is extremely profound, and the revolution and the rebirth of our political system that I'm inspired by is nothing short of moving towards creating the most thriving experience for humanity in relationship to all the plants and animals we share with this planet with as possible. And so that's what we get to orient to as a North Star. But then it's not good enough to just have a really clear North Star. We have to be able to look at the world how it is in this moment and figure out what on earth to do now that is a domino that tips a domino that tips a domino that leads to that outcome. And so that all comes right back to this upcoming event, just 2.5 weeks from now in Austin, Texas, April 3rd through 5th, the Independent National Convention, or INC 23 Austin. And because it's a step in that direction, because we're bringing together so many leaders and so many organizations and so many individuals that are themselves independent, whether or not they've even identified as independent, right? It's not important to say, oh, I'm not political, or I'm not a registered independent, or I'm not registered for anything. I don't vote, or I'm not an independent, or that's not what's relevant. What's relevant is, have you gone on your life's journey and realized that something that your parents or your school or your religion or the media told you was good for you, and then you said, I don't buy it, and then you thought for yourself and you did something for yourself and you set a new trajectory for yourself through your own will that you thought was better for you than what other people told you was good for you. If you've ever done that, then according to my definition, you are absolutely an independent. And so this Independent National Convention is an invitation for the convergence of the divergent thinkers, of the people that are willing to think for themselves and that are applying that in all domains of society, including the political or governmental domain, for us to be able to really share notes on our understanding of the systemic nature of our problems and talk about, discuss, share notes, and progress the solutions that really get us there, and figure out all the intersections. Like, how do all the independent parties function in a greater level of coordinated action? But how does that whole system function with all the democracy reform initiatives? And how does that function integrate with the emerging technology of blockchain and AI? And how does that integrate with all of the art and culture and other tangential movements? And the intersection of all of that is the stitching together of, again, what I said, the United Independent Movement. And so if any of that sounds interesting, if you're either about to jump out of your seat, or if you're just even tickled with interest to some degree, then I would absolutely encourage you to go to the website, which is inc23.us. Again, that's inc23.us. and just get your ticket. And if you're in Austin, great. And if you're not in Austin, then figure your travel accommodations and stay with some friends in Austin, and just show up and plug in to this amazing convergence and get educated, get empowered, meet a ton of people, have a really good time, education, empowerment by day, party, social, art by night. It's going to be at this phenomenal venue called the Palmer Event Center, which I'm so excited to spend 3 days with you at. And I can promise, this is the Christopher Life guarantee, that if you come to this event, you will have a life-changing experience, that it will give you insights that shift the course of your life, that it will create relational opportunities that will shift the course of your life, that it will open up opportunities that will shift the course of your life. I don't say that in an exaggerated fashion. I can already feel this like crackling inferno of new conversations and new possibilities and new relationships happening around every corner at the convention. And then you can also just plug in further to where this kind of vein and river of energy is going from here, and be a part of what happens next.
You know, you talk about though, if like an independent, where I'm going with this. So we have an invitation out for Marianne Williamson, and when she was first an idea to be part of the Love and Politics panel, you know, I went to her Instagram and I saw, oh wow, she has just announced her candidacy for 2024 president, and she's running as a Democrat. And I had that moment of like, ugh. And I said, we have this WhatsApp group for everybody who's in Austin. There's community forming around this, which is exciting. And I posted in there, and you had said, well, she's kind of an independent by heart. So to not get even stuck in all these labels, even if it is that you've been a part of a family who, you know, always votes Democrat or always votes Republican, if you feel that there's something missing, it's not even about that. We're not telling you if you come to this independent national convention, then Marianne Williamson is not who you'll vote for. Maybe you will. Maybe that's who you'll draw to. It's not about the political party. It's about the person in which you are more resonating with. And this idea, I love how when you were speaking, you know, you do a really good job of balancing the I and the we. And Annie Lala, who is a mutual friend of ours and a colleague, and she often talks about the I and the we. And there's usually somebody who's like more of the I person in a relationship and somebody who's more of the we person in a relationship. And when you were speaking, I was like trying to catch like, oh, Christopher's an I person and I'm going to be the we person because I'm the woman here. And so I'm going to be, but you've done, yes, in your thought process around this, there is that connectedness of all of it coming together into one. And I really appreciate also too, is like this idea of being a practice, that this new way of looking at the world and looking at leadership is all of us, we're practicing this. And so this is a opportunity to come, because I know most people who are listening to this podcast are leaders as well. A lot of the people within the WeDeepen ecosystem and the guides and Tantra teachers and facilitators and coaches, we have been practicing for this moment for quite some time. Like you have been working on yourself, and now it's the time that we converge and come together and inject all of that energy into the political realm and into the leadership of our entire country and organization. Now, of course, where there are politics, there are politics. Somebody within the Independent National Union recently said that to me when I was talking about something like, well, where there's politics, there's politics. And it's true, because that is the energetic that actually gives us the kind of the restriction to like evolve into this next level. That's like the little bit of the dark and light working together. If COVID didn't happen, we might not be in this moment. It's like that. when we start to see the shadows, we start to repel against something that is no longer working. It is what drives us into together and into communion. And now we have all of the tools and the systems and the people. We don't have to do things the way they've always been done before. We have the opportunity to design something completely new. And that's what this invitation is, to come and gather and do it together. Now in love, because I'm so excited that to inject love into, and I'll even put on Christina, can be masculine for a moment, whatever, masculine, feminine, but like, I can't wait to penetrate politics with love and all the tools and the skills that we've learned to love, and bring that into this conversation, because that's where it gets exciting. And that's where I can feel like I can start to listen and hear. For the longest time, it was like I remember as being a child, I was turning 18 and school starts to be like, register to vote. And I went to my parents and I'm like, who do we vote for? They're like, we vote for Republican. And I was like, okay, why? No one really answered. And then MTV just kept saying vote and just giving out stickers and say vote. And I was like, okay, why? And they're like, your vote matters. And I was like, I don't really think it does, to be quite honest. Like, I don't think if I sit at my office this day and don't show up to that, I think that my energy is more being utilized this. Then it's, from a love perspective, my dad is in a new relationship. He's been with a woman for a year now. My dad's always identified. It's so interesting that we even identify with our political realm. But he identified himself as a Republican. And so he starts dating a new woman. He really likes her. But she's Democrat. And she was like, I don't think this is going to work. You're Republican, I'm Democrat. And I said to my dad, I was like, Dad, you're 68 years old. Who cares? Just go be a Democrat. And he did. He's like, you're right. Whatever. And he just loosened up and
changed his entire life. He's like, woo, party. He's
totally
going to Party Man next year.
Now he's like a year into this relationship, and they called me as I walked in for this interview to check in. And so, yeah. And so this idea, so love, when I think of what is the definition of love, for me, it's, and you nailed it, and how you even spoke about this, unknowing but I heard it. It's the, love is the practice of eliminating the ego, the layers and layers of conditioning and ego, and doing that transformational work to become the most purest, authentic, highest version of yourself, combined with ever increasing acts of sharing. You give to who you love. And in a society, in a world, this is great. Why my work started in the relational way is because to get two people to practice this together is, that's where it starts. Two humans coming together and saying, hey, let's practice this. I'm going to take my mask off. You take your mask off. We can do it over a period of time, and then ever increasing acts of sharing. So we're then going to continue to give to each other and give to each other. Oh, look, we're taking a photo in the midst of recording this podcast. And so we're going to then share with each other. And the thing is, in a relationship with just two people, if one person pulls back, even 10%, and they stop showing up and giving, or they put that ego up, the other person feels it. And that's what happens as a collective in society. If just one person and all of it, this is the unity game. This is what I believe we're here to grow towards, is why, I believe in reincarnation, and we're coming back again and again in our souls to evolve and to come into greater unity. But again, if just one person pulls back, if one person, we all feel it. The whole society and the whole world feels it. So this panel discussion on love and politics, I'm going to talk about that specific one, which is on Tuesday at 2 p.m. is, we have Bigtree, who's interesting. He's the controversial one, I'll say, of the group, because Bigtree, if you Google his name, he is known as the quote unquote anti-vaxxer. But Del has been, long before COVID, he has been working to shine light on the corruption within the pharmaceutical world. And then that's kind of as he started that journey into media, you're able to see even more behind it. So Bigtree, Charles Eisenstein. Charles, he's one episode of this podcast probably back in the 40s, you'll see of the belonging episode. And Charles is the author of the book Sacred Economies and the More Beautiful World We Know Is Possible. And he really roots into this idea of a gift economy and being able to share resources with one another. And then who else is with me? So we have, Dr. Avrum Weiss. Dr. Avrum Weiss is author of the book Hidden in Plain Sight, How Men's Fears of Women Are Shaping Their Intimate Relationships. I think that's a really interesting conversation to bring into politics, because there's often a complaint around like, where are all the women in politics? Why aren't they here? Well, and how do we make space for them? And there is an underlining fear, I think, of a societal fear, and I've seen it from working with men in the relational realm, is that they're terrified of women. Like, they're fearful of women's emotions. They're fearful of looking like a woman, of their femininity shining through. They're fearful of being entrapped and controlled. And this is playing out in our political realm. So we're going to discuss that, as well as a few other key people on this panel. Who do I have? I have Dr. Avrum Weiss, I have Charles Eisenstein, Bigtree, Stefanos, who's a relationship coach, big time here in the Austin area. He's coming on board. And then my last person is me. Yeah, you. Is me. Yeah, it is. And then we're going to, if you're listening to this, I am going to throw after party. So the keynote, Tuesday night is a popping night of keynote, but then later on in the evening, after all the keynotes, Dave Asprey, the father of biohacking, is hosting 11 Politics after party gathering at his home. He might get a little upset that I made this public. Don't tell him. But that is available. So just message me. And I'm excited to bring the WeDeepen community and guides and leaders and teachers of love and coaches into this event, and to be supportive of this, because you guys are all leaders. If you look through on the new WeDeepen circle, there's about 550 members right now. And you look through all of them, they're all coaches. It's like, they're all transformational teachers. So this is our time to come through and penetrate love into the political realm together. Last topic before we wrap is money. So Christopher, I've seen, like, you have been working nonstop. I don't know if you're sleeping these days. And it takes a lot of money to produce an event. I'm an event producer. This is, you have a big convention center, and you're out there. I know you're fundraising. That's where most of your time is going right now. How is this event happening financially?
Yeah. Well, we're doing it together, as a growing movement. And so this is, grassroots to the core. And we also have various partners. But yeah, it takes a lot of revenue and income to produce an event like this. The budget's probably going to be about $500,000 or $600,000 when it's all said and done. But that's this event is juxtaposing the Republican National Convention and the Democrat National Convention. So we're actually putting on an event that approaches that kind of convention feel that can help to put the independent sector on the map in a more prominent way. And now is exactly like the perfect moment in time to do that. We have Tulsi Gabbard, who declared independence from the Democratic Party, 6 months ago. Then an acting senator, Senator Sinema, declared independence from her party affiliation. So there's this moment in time where there's a lot of energy going independent, from individuals that are declaring their independence through their voting registration to elected officials and everyone in between. So to create a national convention platform helps to strengthen that energy moving out of the two-party system into somewhere else, and also gives the media something to chew on and something to tell a story about, which can allow millions of people to then strengthen the narrative that the independents are organizing and the independent sector is really providing leadership in our country and moving forward. So we wanted to put on an event that kind of was at that convention scale. We have various partners, and we're looking for more partners. And one great way to partner with the event is to just come to the event and buy a ticket. And that makes every individual really a partner, because you contribute a couple $100 and you're contributing to this work. And then you're also contributing to you participating in the work. Above and beyond that, we have a VIP program, which is a way for people to have more resources to be able to contribute more, and also, get a premium experience while they're there. We have some VIP lounges and some ways to connect to all of our speakers and that kind of a thing. And then beyond that, we have brands that are using the event to be able to create brand recognition for their, for potential customers or potential users to learn about their products or learn about their platforms or learn about their services. And so that's a great expression of synergy, where a company, contributes several $1,000s and gets some brand recognition in one of our panels, or a logo on one of our day's programs, or sponsors a meal or other things like that. And it's all the different pieces coming together. So, and then we also have just a benefactor program. So donors that, can write a check for $5,000 or $15,000 or $50,000. We need all the resources that we can get to be able to make sure this event goes well. And to de-stress my nervous system a little bit, make sure we can pay all the bills for the hard costs and have all the expenses that we need to be able to take care of everything that needs to happen here. We have over 100 panelists that are coming in from all across the country. So that's, it's a huge convergence of expertise all at one place at one time. And so, yeah, if any of those kind of resonate with you, or if you feel inspired to participate and inspired to contribute, then step number one is buy a ticket. And step number two is you can email support@inc23.us. If you'd like to learn more about our sponsorship program to tie in your brand and utilize this national convention to create visibility for your brand in front of potential clients or customers or users of your products and services. And if you're just a donor that has resources that you've worked really hard to accumulate resources, and now you want to have purpose for those resources and have impact with those resources and contribute those resources to places that you're really inspired by, then frankly, I couldn't think of a more powerful place to bring those resources to. And yes, this is quote unquote politics, but it's actually a nonprofit organization is putting on this event, because this event isn't about getting people elected, and this event isn't about legislative activity. This event is about a narrative and an ethos and civic engagement and movement building and helping to create relationships and helping look at the possibility of what could happen if the independent sector started working together more effectively. And so all contributions are tax-deductible contributions. So it's a really easy way for people to plug in. The last thing that I want to mention at like a kind of content philosophical level is just to kind of tie the knot around this notion of politics itself, because the word for so many people is a barrier. And most people aren't in relationship with the word, they're in relationship with their connotations of the word. And so most people's connotations of the word of politics is manipulation, deceit, vying for power. And you say, oh, that's all the politics, or I'm into politics. And what they're really saying is they're not into corruption. They're really saying they're not into manipulation. They're just saying they're not into deceit. Politics at its root, etymologically, comes from the Greek root polis, which is the center part of the town, that people would leave their own affairs, their own, farms, and come to discuss and converse how they needed to work together to be able to solve their collective problems and create the best possible future for their children, and to protect their homes. And so at the core of politics, it's about stewardship and it's about working together. And so that's the driving ethos of what politics means to me. And so if that inspires you, if you care about this notion of stewardship, of determining, of helping to identify our problems that we have at a societal level, be a part of creating those solutions, and be a part of deploying those solutions at a scale that leaves no one behind, then you care about politics, and you have a role to play in helping to shape the future of politics. The very last thing that I want to land with at a philosophical level is this relationship between love and politics, which I think correlates this relationship between love and power. And so I'll just define a couple terms real quick and we'll bring it to a close. To me, power is the ability to achieve an outcome based upon your desire to achieve that outcome, regardless of the quality of that outcome. Whether that outcome is to be able to feed 1 million people or whether that outcome is to kill somebody, your power is your ability to achieve that intention. Love, as I have kind of been initiated into from one of my mentors named Forrest Landry, he defines love as that which enables choice. So love is that which makes more choice available to people. And I to me, that's the most perfect definition of love that I've ever heard of before. And the moment I heard it, it's resonated, and I've never thought about love differently ever since then. And so if love means I give you some of my energy, and in that process, you have more choices available to you than you had before I contributed to you in that way, then to me, that is the heart of what love is. And so if you hold on to that for a minute with me, then if power is the ability to achieve your outcome, and love is that which enables choice, then the integration of love and power is to become profoundly effective at supporting other people in having more choice. And to me, that is actually the destiny of humanity. And that's the destiny of leadership. And that's the destiny of human government, is that we become more and more powerful, more and more effective at helping more and more people have more and more choices available to them. And what those choices enable is for people to determine for themselves how they want to improve the quality of their lives. And so that puts the improvement of the quality of life for all as the ultimate aspiration for human civilization collectively, and I believe the ultimate purpose of human government.
Wow. Yes. Yes, yes, yes to all of that. Christopher, I know this sounds strange to say because, but I feel this like innate, like I'm just so proud of you as a human being, and thank you. And there's been a lot of conversations around privilege. And I see when people say of like you're privileged and you're using your privilege in such a positive way, because here we are, we're sitting on the floor in a bedroom of a studio apartment in Austin where you're sleeping on a mattress on the floor, so you can make this event happen, because you know that you're 100% supported by so many people, so you're well connected, but we're not in some fancy house, and you're literally bootstrapping and getting this job done, and it's so admirable. And what I said is, when I saw this come back, because we gathered in 2020, and then it was kind of mute for a little bit of time. And then when I heard that this was coming back, I was like, yes, sign me up. I don't have time to do this and to run this. Christopher's taking this role. I'm going to support Christopher. So it's like you've taken this job, and that's what I would like to invite everybody listening to this podcast. Like, you don't have to go and recreate this. We have somebody to back behind who's playing this role. Keep playing your job, the one that you're doing in the world, and we converge and support this initiative that you're leading. And thank you so much for your endless time and your energy and the way that you're thinking about things and the way that you're structuring things. And it's my honor to be able to support this. And everybody within the WeDeepen ecosystem, this is our time to rally behind and support this initiative, because we get to all do this together. Now, the two names that I did neglect when I was talking about the Love and Politics panel is Marianne Williamson, who is unconfirmed, and also Daryl Davis, who is one of the episodes of this podcast. Daryl Davis is a Black man who has converted over 200 members of the Ku Klux Klan outside the Ku Klux Klan. He has 200 of their robes hanging in his closet. He's unconfirmed if he's going to be with us, but if he's not with us this year, then April of 2024, although it's a whole another year away, so don't wait for that. But we are converging, and we're planting these seeds, and we are making something happen. And all of the things that are important to you are important to us as well, to create the more beautiful world that we know is possible.
Thank you for having me on your show, Christina. And blessings to all the WeDeepen community and all of your endeavors.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for listening to another episode of Deepen with Christina. Again, if you do enjoy this podcast, please do like, subscribe, follow, rate it. It helps more people find it, helps me continue to do it. And while I do record this show and we get to speak remotely on some level of wavelength, what I most am excited about is being with you in person. So definitely come to the Independent National Convention. Let's converge there April 3rd through the 5th here in Austin, Texas. There is a hotel room block coming together. We also have, who owns the Alpaca Playhouse. We have places that you can stay if you want to fly in from Los Angeles or wherever it may be. We'll work it out. I love you all. And until next time, bye.